Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Abdullah. I'm going to be hosting this masterclass. This masterclass is entitled Islamic Finance and Education, and it's going to be exploring the importance of education in Islamic finance capabilities and developing innovative solutions. We're very lucky to have three very highly qualified speakers for this session. They'll all be speaking for approximately 20 minutes each, following which we will have a 30-minute Q&A session. Our first speaker will be Daud Vicary Abdullah, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer for the International Centre for Education in Islamic Finance, and he has come from Malaysia. Our second speaker will be Professor Dame Julia King, who is the Vice Chancellor of Aston University in the UK. And our final speaker will be Professor Dato, Dr. Azmi Omar, who is the Director General of the Islamic Research and Training Institute, and this is part of the Islamic Development Bank based in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Without further ado, I will hand over to Daud.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. I'm just going to check that. Oh, I have got a slideshow there. That's good. That's always reassuring. What I wanted to do was firstly give you a little bit of background, and then in the next 15-20 minutes really give you a case study about the creation of INCEIF, which is the International Centre for Education in Islamic Finance, and otherwise known as the Global University of Islamic Finance, where we came from and how we got to where we are today, and where we're going in the future. My own personal background, for those of you who are interested, and I'll be very brief because some of you may not be interested, is I'm British by birth, but I've lived in Malaysia. I lived out of the UK since 1988. I converted to Islam in 1991, and largely because I met somebody and fell in love, but also I fell in love with Islamic finance, and you'll have to quiz me later on how all of that happened. And I've been a practitioner. I've been a banker, and I've run and set up 2 Islamic banks from scratch. I've also consulted on that, and now later in life, and indeed I'm celebrating my birthday today, please don't sing because I'm hugely embarrassed. Later in life I'm now running a university which is dedicated to a topic and to a subject matter, Islamic finance, which I'm passionate about. And I wanted to describe to you a little bit by way of a case study how all of this occurred. INCEIF was set up in December of 2005, not so long ago, and I recall it very, very well. Why? Well, at that time I was managing director of an Islamic bank, which was very much part of the second wave of development of Islamic finance in Malaysia, where many of the window operations were being asked to become full-scale subsidiaries. And one of the challenges we had in moving from a window to a subsidiary was a lack of human capital resources who were adequately capable of running financial institutions at a senior level. My sense at that time was that there were probably not more than 50 or 60 people who were in that area of capability in Malaysia. This is only 8 years ago. Some people may have thought there were more, but I was a little bit cynical about it. And there were only 50 or so people in a rapidly expanding market. So I, together with a number of other CEOs, went to see the central bank at a senior level. And the central bank's response was the creation of INCEIF. There were also some other responses, but INCEIF was established at the end of 2005, specifically with a role to develop senior human capital in the Islamic finance space, initially for Malaysia, but later globally. And this is very much in line with Malaysia's aspirations to be a an Islamic financial marketplace in the world. But there was also a clear understanding and a clear roadmap with regards to professional talent, human capital development. And this has been one of the features, I think, of the growth of Islamic finance in Malaysia. There has been a very comprehensive and very complete plan at all levels, at regulation, in terms of developing the industry, in terms of developing the capital market and developing the human capital and the legal framework as well. So our role is dedicated primarily to the development of human capital, not just in Malaysia, but now the whole world. And I will describe a little bit more as I go on about how we've been doing that and what was being set up. We effectively have five programs or 5 pillars in INCEIF, and I'm not going to dwell on these too long, but just to give you a flavour for what has been set up over the last 6 or 7 years. These all have been in place for about 3 or 4 years. And firstly, we have our inaugural program, which is a master's level qualification called a Chartered Islamic Finance Professional. It was accredited at master's level educationally, but it was also a program which was set up with a great deal of input from the industry. Initially from Malaysia. I remember as a practitioner I was called in for several sessions, focus group sessions with INCEIF, by my predecessor to really get to grips with what the industry required and what we were going to teach. And indeed, this process still continues. The second area, which was set up a little later, was graduate studies, where we have a more traditional master's in Islamic finance and PhD in Islamic finance. And these are more traditional, they're more academic. However, they are extremely popular. Indeed, we turn people away, not because, well, it's largely because we don't have the capacity, but we're setting very high standards in terms of research and in terms of masters, and a great deal of people are now beginning to realise that with our capabilities, this is the place to come and learn. We're dedicated to research as well. This is very much industry driven. We have research, I call them contracts, although that's probably the wrong terminology. But for example, BNP, Banque Nationale de Paris, has invested in us and set up an Islamic Wealth Management Centre, which has been in play for a year. We are working with one of the sovereign wealth funds in Malaysia, Khazanah, who's invested in research. The Oracle Corporation has invested in research, particularly in terms of accounting and systems for Islamic finance. Deloitte, which is a former employer of mine, has invested, as well as Kuwait Finance House, just to name a few. There are others. Very much our research is driven by industry needs, and in some ways we drive industry, because we've done a great deal of groundbreaking work. Part of the research we've done is on the role of Islamic finance in economic development, and we presented a half-day workshop on this at the INF Spring Meeting in Washington in April. And as a result of that, we've produced a book which is available free of charge, if you like, from the World Bank website and also from ours. As a result of doing our programs, we've discovered over the years that we have capability to consult and drive executive programs. Consultancy is more based on people coming to us and say, please help, rather than us going out there and looking for work. But the role of executive programs has really developed in the last couple of years and is being used very much as a tool to get into markets and to raise awareness. 18 months ago, for example, in Istanbul or in Turkey, there was a great deal of excitement about the growing of participatory finance, but not a lot of cohesion. 18 months later, all the major government departments are in a cohesive mode. We've run 5 executive programs there, and we've developed a relationship with one university and the Bursa, the Capital Markets Authority, the Central Bank, the Prime Minister's Department, Treasury, where we're coordinating both research and also developing executive programs, which we've rolled out 5 this year. There's another one still to come in December. So that's a very, very constructive way that we're doing, shall we say, short, sharp interactions with the community to arouse interest in Islamic finance and to explain some of the issues which relate to Islamic finance. And these vary from real issues where we presented to global leadership at the IMF meeting on the role of Islamic finance in economic development, right down to some nitty-gritty detail about liquidity management with risk and liquidity managers in Islamic financial institutions. The 5th pillar is the Knowledge Management Centre, which kind of collates everything we do. So it's much more than a library. It has digital and physical studies, reports, research, and articles, and it is a place where everything comes together. If we want to look at stuff at INCEIF, it's best to come through the Knowledge Management Centre. The next steps that we're taking, we're keeping very, very focused. We've got to remember we're a university that was only created. In fact, we took in our first students in 2007. So we've only really been operational for about 6 years. But our next steps, and what we're keeping very focused on, is our academic excellence. You know, clearly we need to build reputation and standards around that. That in turn leads to a building of a global reputation, and the fact that the World Bank, the IMF, the Islamic Development Bank, the IFSB partner with us for the delivery of research and for programs, and these have been strategic relationships where we haven't gone looking for them, they've come to us, is an indication that we're starting to get that level of academic excellence and relevance and a growing global reputation. But of course there's also this issue of financial sustainability, which is focused, and I don't want to tell you my problems, but it's not like running a bank. In a bank I could turn it around and make money in 2 years. You don't do that at the university, as I've discovered. It's a much longer program, and whilst I'm extremely grateful to Bank Vicary Malaysia for their initial investment in the form of an endowment fund of about $200 million, when I compare that with Harvard and their $36 billion in endowment fund, I've got some way to go to achieve my financial sustainability. But anyway, we're working on it and we'll get there, because if we grow and keep our academic excellence and grow our reputation, then the financial sustainability will surely come. Let me just spend a little bit of time really describing where we were, and this is meant as an encouragement. The announcements earlier this week about Malaysia, I'm in the UK, reset GBS, I'm in the UK. The announcements earlier this week are extremely encouraging, but it has focused considerable attention on the need for growing and developing human capital in this marketplace. And discussions I've been in, on-site, off-site, and on the fringe of this really indicate that it is a focus of attention. That's why I'm glad you're here. But it's an area where there's no need for desperation, because if you look back to Malaysia and the creation of INCEIF, which was only less than a decade ago, a great deal has been achieved in a very short time with concentration and focus and with good planning and good execution. When we started out, and the first intake of students in 2007 doing our master's equivalent CIFP program, there were 32 students from 9 countries. We're now looking at a situation just 6 years later where we have over 2,000 students from more than 80 countries. We have a faculty of 31, that's soon to go up to about 36, I think, in our plans. And 60% of those students are online. They're doing our CIFP program from all other points of the world. And we have concentration centres in Africa, here in the UK, in Turkey, and also in Japan and Australia, where people come and sit their exams and do revision and do seminars and so on. But we're certainly grown pretty rapidly in a short space of time, and that's largely because we've had a great deal of focus and concentration on what is our core value and what is it that we're actually delivering. Part of that going global, and this should explode all sorts of countries recognise your country on here, we've got a long way to go, but we've done this through collaboration. This is not about setting up bricks and mortar of INCEIF in every city in the world. Wish that I could, but it's a completely unrealistic idea. What is realistic is collaboration. And these collaborations are formed largely through government-to-government interaction. Bear in mind that we are a reporting line directly into the Central Bank of Malaysia. Governor Zeti is my boss. She is Chancellor of the university, and she is chairman of the board. But we work very hard on relationships with major transnational corporations, major multilateral corporations like the World Bank, the IFSB and the IDB, but we've also worked with partnerships with strategic universities around the world, and that list is growing. In the UK at the moment, we have a partnership with Reading University and Henley Business School, where in their MBA program they embed an elective in Islamic finance, which is a sensible way to go, and we're looking at how we can grow and develop that. But the next steps for us in the UK are certainly going to be the running of executive programs here in the City of London, and that will start next year, and we'll be making an announcement about that at a later stage once we've firmed up the details on that. But as you can see from the map, we've got a range of international organisations. It could be universities, it could be multilateral organisations, it could even be industry organisations where we're starting to grow and deliver programs. A good example is Africa, which has been on our heat sensor map for the last couple of years. Within the next 6 months, we will be running programs for East Africa, the COMESA countries out of Nairobi, and for West Africa, French-speaking WAMU countries, we will be running out of Dakar, Senegal, starting in December. And this is all part of our collaborative process. We're collaborating in West Africa with the IDB's private sector, ICD, and with the local WAMU central bank in order to run those programs. And in East Africa, it's COMESA, which is the EU in East Africa. If those of you from Europe will understand the EU, those of you from ASEAN will understand ASEAN, and if you're from East Africa, you'll understand the 17 countries that are members of COMESA. We will be running our programs there. So our global approach is collaboration, and it's largely through government to government, or through central bank, or through securities commissions and so on globally, through the multilateral organizations, and also very much through university partnerships, which we encourage and grow and develop with people that have like-minded ideas. And these vary from research collaborations to actually delivering our programs, or embedding some of our programs in master's programs, and so on and so forth. Let's share with you how we've how we've grown to date. We have a total of 619 graduates, which isn't a stunning number, but when you started just a short time ago, these graduates have effectively come out of the program. We had our 5th convocation just a month ago, at the beginning of October. And the majority of these graduates have got the professional master's qualification, the CIFP, which is accredited by the Financial Accreditation Agency out of Malaysia. I see Dr. Omar is here, and he's head of the FAA. Thank you for coming, Dr. And a number of masters, and we have 11 PhDs. And moving on from that, we take a look at most of our graduates, a large proportion of our graduates are employable pretty quickly. Nearly 50% of them end up in the industry, and by that I mean they're in banks, financial institutions, stockbroking, unit trust, asset management, and so on. And we also have about 14% go into professional services. That's the likes of Deloitte and Ernst & Young, or consultancy firms. 15% end up going into central banks or regulatory authorities or treasury departments. 14% go into teaching, and 8% are others, and don't ask me to describe that. They've probably got their qualifications in Islamic finance, and since I'm in the UK, they decided they wanted to open a fish and chip shop, but I'm not quite sure I can track that through. Anyway, I'm told I've got 5 minutes, which I guess is 4 minutes now. Bridging the gap to understanding Islamic finance, I think this is one of the key things. The time I spent at Deloitte when I was global managing partner for Islamic finance was really explaining to 140,000 employees in Deloitte that don't give up your day job. 80% of what you know as a tax or an auditor or a corporate finance expert or a consulting expert is extremely relevant to Islamic finance. It's not like you have to go back to ground zero and completely re-educate yourself. So there is plenty of opportunity in Islamic finance for people who've got knowledge of other areas to transform and to become extremely useful in Islamic finance relatively quickly. And we've discovered that through the activities that we perform within INCEIF in terms of the relevance of the programs, but also the focus of the research, and particularly on policies, financial inclusion, ethics, core values, and so on, and leadership competencies resonate very well with the students who come to us. In terms of the way forward, our role is very much a collaboration, that is key, and it's supporting the industry. So we have active engagements with many global entities, which I've already described, and professional organizations. We're continuously improving capabilities and trying to produce a constant supply of competent talent. We provide advice and input to support government as well as public sector through technical partnerships. Many of you know here that we've given a considerable amount of input to the UK Islamic Finance Task Force on issues relating to education, where we've been engaged very actively since the inception of that task force, and I'm pleased to say that things are moving forward extremely well there. It's important that we focus on professional standards and accreditation. This is absolutely key, so that graduates of INCEIF or anywhere else actually have a professional accreditation which allows them to be transportable between jurisdictions. Global collaborations is very much part of what we we do. We collaborate, we want to collaborate, and we want to have focused collaborations which deal in getting results. That is very much our business ethos. And we're very much concerned about lifelong learning. So that ties up, I think, with the professional accreditation, which allows, of course, for continuing professional development, and we're very active in that area. And of course, we need to remain